water is a vital resource for all of us individuals, and it can help in many benefits, such as removing toxins from our body and cleansing our faces when we have too much acne, and it's basically the answer to all our sicknesses. So why is it that most of the water that's available to us here in California is actually filled with fertilizers and dirt? Today our group will be presenting a problem-solving presentation about polluted water within the Central Valley. Millions of individuals and communities face this extreme dilemma on a day-to-day basis. I, Caroline Quilley, will be identifying the problems.
I'm Tatum Lee. I'm talking about the causes.
I'm Grace, and I'll be discussing the solution.
And we hope that you find this presentation to be eye-opening to the situation at hand. Imagine moving into a new home in a new city. You go to make a cup of coffee on the next morning, and as you pour in the creamer, your coffee starts to curdle. Another day, you go to use the drinking fountain on campus, and the discolored liquid comes out. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced something like this or something similar. Well, obviously it is prevalent in this area, but unlike us, some of us are facing this on a day-to-day basis. Today, I'll be presenting the topic of water pollution. Water pollution is a social problem that needs action immediately because of its environmental effects and the disabilities it can have on an average person. I'll be discussing Central Valley's nationally known statistics on contaminated water, how families and citizens have been affected, and how the agriculture business is also getting affected because of these pollutants. Now, many of us may think that big cities are gonna have the most polluted type of tap water, but Central Valley actually may have it worse. Central Valley is actually home to some of the United States' most contaminated water, and Central Valley has the most water pollution violations. According to Central Valley's National Public Radio discussion on county water contamination, 66% of the 18 counties that make up Central Valley are actually containing contaminated water. Now, water contamination has affected nearly 300 different communities in major counties, such as San Joaquin County, Kern County, and Fresno County, as stated by CommunityWaterCenter.org, a community program looking to find water pollution solutions. Central Valley has dealt with water contamination for so many decades, dating back to the 80s. And even though this has dated back to the 80s, California state officials haven't addressed this situation until 5 years ago. And this shows that we need to take action onto this problem right now. And this is according to the LA Times article, "California water crisis is dangerous, just like Flint's. Will the state clean it up once and for all?" According to California Water Board's document on California's contaminated groundwater, around 42% of the pollution is made of chlorides and salinity, 25.5% of it comes from non-priority organics, 17% comes from pesticides, and 18% comes from metals. And this has been going on since 2001. Now, these harsh effects of water contamination have affected not only the reputation of these counties, but have also affected the families that live there. Now, family lives have been negatively impacted with the increase of water contamination. These contaminants have majorly restricted water access for families. Contaminated, a program ran by Central Valley's Public Radio, interviewed Debbie Ackrey, who experienced the event of curdled coffee that I described in the introduction. So she made this coffee using her tap water, and the result of the curdled coffee derived from the presence of uranium, which is actually a common contamination specific to the mountain communities. This resulted in her not being able to use any tap water at all, and she had to spend around another $50 to $80 every month just to buy bottled water, because that was the only safe water that was available to her in that area. In San Joaquin Valley, 1 million residents in this actually use groundwater for drinking water. And this groundwater is the ones that have the pesticides, the nitrates, arsenic, and includes uranium. According to Water Deeply's article, living in California's San Joaquin Valley may harm your health. For families with younger children, water contamination may be an even higher threat because of the health risks that it can contain. Contaminated water, specifically with nitrate, which is actually very common here in the Central Valley because nitrate is used in farming, and Central Valley is the farming agricultural area. This nitrates can cause death in infants less than 6 months and even lead to birth of stillborn babies called blue baby syndrome, according to CommunityWaterCenter.org. Also above on the screen, in the top right, this is actually an image of someone having nitrate poisoning. This is actually in a different country, but it does show the other effects that can happen because of contaminated water. And that was according to CommunityWaterCenter.org. Some schools like Shallow Elementary near Modesto provide bottled water for students because the water fountains are closed and covered with tarps. These are due to the hazardous amounts of nitrate contaminating the water. As noted in SACB's article, 360,000 Californians have unsafe drinking water, and are you one of them? Additionally, health risks such as gastrointestinal illnesses, reproductive problems, and neurological disorders come from the water pollution. And these can also put infants, young kids, and pregnant women at risk, and this is noted by CDC's collection of water-related diseases and contaminants. Central Valley's contaminated water has not only affected citizens, but also has affected businesses. And this is specifically prevalent through the agricultural business. Now, the agricultural business have been receiving negative effects from the contaminated waters. Most agricultural farms actually use the contaminated water that we're drinking to water crops, and this has raised concerns amongst many communities. According to the United States Geological Survey, crop irrigation accounted for 89% of the groundwater in Central Valley. So this means that the crops that we're going to be eating are filled with nitrates and metals. And if you think about it, if our water is already contaminated, imagine how much our body would be affected if we're also eating these types of pollutions and stuff. The sciencing article, Effects of Water Pollution on Plants and Animals, also indicates that high concentrations of nitrogen, phosphorus, and phosphates encourage the growth of invasive plants which can reduce crop yield. The reduction of crop yield can lead to the reduction in profit that farmers make, so this can also harm the business as well. Additionally, farmers that house livestock as well can also be affected. High concentrations of salinity, nitrogens, pesticides, and fertilizers can actually hurt the animals, and it can lead to a shortness of breath, suffocation, weight gains, miscarriages, and even lead to their death in around 3 to 5 hours after consumption. And this is according to the article, Water Quality Impacts of Livestock. So now that I have addressed all of the negative impacts that water pollution causes, let's review the main points. Today, I've discussed Central Valley's water contamination statistics and how this issue has been around for decades, but no one has put a full, well-standing solution to it. Next, I discussed how families are affected and the health risks that comes with them. And lastly, the effects that agricultural businesses are facing on their crops and livestock due to these water pollutants. With this, I hope I have enlightened you on the mass problems that 11 counties, including our county, that obviously everyone has faced some situation with. And just like us, there are other communities that are facing this on a day-to-day basis. I hope that your knowledge has expanded on the health risks that something as simple as water can have, and I hope that you start to become wary of where your water actually comes from.